Go.
Hey guys, I'm TJ. Welcome to my brand new channel. I'm going to show you how to fix cars, what components I'm replacing or repairing, and how those components work. During this corona epidemic, cars cost a lot of money. Some people are out of jobs or whatnot, less paychecks. With that being said, if you learn how to fix your own car, you can save yourself a boatload of money. Today, I'm going to show you how to replace a strut. Here we have a 2000 Cadillac DeVille DHS. Now the strut doesn't have anything wrong with it, but I'm going to show you how to replace it just so that you have the knowledge. We have our strut mount up here, and then underneath the car I'll have to take the wheel off so that I can show you the strut assembly itself. Over here I got various tools. I won't necessarily need all of them, but in general you'll need a socket set, a jack. Now I have jack stands so that I don't have to continuously use my jack. I have hammers, wrenches, impact guns, and then over here I have my spring compressor, which will help me compress the spring and undo the amount of force that's behind it, because each spring on a car has anywhere from 1,500 to about 4,000 pounds of force compressed on it. So if you do it improperly, you have the potential of killing yourself. For this project, we're going to need 2 jack stands so that we have the ability to turn the wheel on each side. Now that we got this car jacked up, we're going to take our wheel off. And now you can see, here's our strut assembly, here's our rotors, here's our caliper, our tie rod is over here, our control arm's down here. But this is what we're focused on today. We're focused on removing our strut. Cadillac, and it's a little different from other cars. Not only is the nut size is going to be different, but it has a steering wheel immobilizer. So in order for me to turn the wheel from side to side, like this, I had to turn the car on so that it would unlock the steering wheel immobilizer. But now that I have my 24 millimeter, I'm now going to gun these 2 nuts off, and we're going to go from there. Different. So now that those 2 are off, in this case, these bolts are actually splined. I won't be able to actually gun them off. As you can see, if I were to take my impact gun and try and gun them off, they don't spin. So what I have to do so that I don't damage the threads is take the nut, spin it on a little bit, and then I'm going to take my hammer spin the wheel again, and then we're going to bounce these. Now that we got the bolts out, you just give it a little wiggle, and slowly but surely it comes out. Now as you can see, we got 2 line hoses here. Now this is our ABS hose, and then this one is our brake line. So we got to remove both of these tiny little bolts so that we don't damage these hoses as we take it out.
Go.
So on this Cadillac, I'm going to be using AC Delco electric ratcheting wrench with a 10 millimeter socket attached to it to remove these 2 bolts. Now that we're up top, your strut mount is typically up here or over there on each side up in the corner, typically on almost every single car. Now these are 15 mils, so I'm going to zip all 3 of these off. There's typically not a lot of torque with any of these bolts. They're typically torqued to like 35 or 40 foot-pounds. So if you just get them to where they're nice and tight when you're installing them, then you should be good to go. Start to take the bolts out. You'll want to start grabbing you want to start holding on to the strut itself so that it doesn't drop and damage anything. We got our last bolt here. Now that all the bolts are out, what's especially important is that you hold it because it will drop straight out. And then you just ease it out, and that's your strut assembly. Now what we're gonna do next is we're gonna compress this spring, which holds roughly 1,500 to 3,000 foot-pounds of force. So it's very dangerous, which is why when you do this, at bare minimum, use safety glasses so that if you do it wrong, you still have your eyes. Before we start it, I'm gonna give my cameraman safety glasses so that in case of it blows up, he is protected also. So this works like a clamp. As it starts to get tighter, it's gonna compress the spring. So we want our first one as close as we can to the bottom. So I'm gonna mount this one right here, and I'm gonna mount this one right here. Now it has these safety pins. Make sure that they're all the way locked in and not just partially in. There's this little button knob here that once that's pressed in, you'll know that it's in. And now you want this fairly perpendicular to it. So this one's gonna be like that. Let me get it somewhat tight. Now, unfortunately, because of the mounting plate, we're gonna have to mount this upside down compared to the last one. So as you compress the spring, make sure that you do it not one side at a time, but little by little. So as you're compressing it, well, that's loosening it. So as you're compressing in it, you do a couple times, and then you'll do a couple more times. So you'll do the one side, and then you'll do the other side. And then after a while, as you now can see, the spring itself has lifted from the pad. Sometimes it will lift from the bottom, and sometimes it will lift from the top. In this case, it came up from the bottom. Now all we have to do is take this nut off. I'm gonna try gunning it off first, but for those of you that don't have an impact gun, you would need a Torx bit and a box wrench to take it off. And so once you have the spring compressed, if you don't have an impact gun, you'll need probably a box wrench and a Torx wrench, a Torx bit, so that you can fit into the Torx area, because sometimes they're specialized, sometimes it's a hex, sometimes it's a smaller socket. It really depends on the manufacturer. But 90% of the time, you're able to gun the nut off with an impact gun. So, unfortunately, this time I wasn't. So, like the rest of you, who don't have an impact gun, I'll have to attach my box wrench, and then attach my torque wrench, and then slowly but surely it will come off. It can spring up. So before you take the nut off fully, make sure that your spring is nice and loose, which it is. So then you can proceed to take your nut off. There's a nice little washer. When you replace your strut, Sometimes it comes with a nice little washer, sometimes it doesn't. And then here's your strut mount, and there's bearings inside of this which allow the strut to move from side to side as you turn the wheel. And then here is your spring. Make sure that you don't bounce it so that it doesn't go flying anywhere. And then you take this off, and that's your little cover, your dust cover, so that your strut itself doesn't get rusty. And then here at the bottom is the rubber oscillator dampener that essentially just prevents noise from the strut making, from instead of hitting metal, it's hitting this rubber padding so that it doesn't make noise while you're driving. So now that our strut is out, we're going to get our new strut and put our new strut in. Now that we got our new strut, we're going to reassemble it.
One hour later.
It's undone. We can now take our locks out, undo. Undo it where we can now undo it by hand. Now that that's out, we can now slide it out, get our next one out, and then let's put this puppy in the car. So now that it's out, we got our shock, it's all good to go. Now let's get this puppy in the car and then take it for a test drive. Alright guys, so once you've done that and gotten the spring back in and the strut all put together, the hard part's done. Now just reverse everything that I did. I'll quickly show you, but reverse the process that you did to take it apart, and it goes in back pretty easy and pretty quick. So now that you finish your strut, what you want to listen for is like a clicking, essentially you're gonna hear a clicking or a clacking, something that sounds like metal hitting metal, and it's just gonna sound completely not right. You'll know it when you see it. So as I take it for a drive, that's what I'll be listening for. So yes, it's a little harder to hear over my exhaust system since I have a muffler delete system, but so not everyone will have to hear over the exhaust. But so as I'm taking it for a test drive, that's what I'm listening for. You'll want to try and go over bumps, make turns, see if you hear anything that's out of the ordinary. So as I make this turn, I'm listening, I don't hear anything. I'll make another turn and I'll see if I hear anything. I'll try and go over some bumps. But if I don't hear anything in the first couple of blocks, truthfully, you're probably perfectly okay. Now, problems could arise over the next couple of miles, so you want to keep an eye out for the next day or two. But if you don't hear any noise in the next couple of days, you probably fixed the part correctly and you probably have absolutely no problems. So as I continue to go over bumps and make turns, I still don't hear any noise. So that tells me that I did this repair properly and it is good to go. And if this was a customer's car, this would be the check to make sure that there is no problems. Since there is no problems, you now can hand the keys back to the customer and you now have a happy customer.